Hi there, it's Kevin with RogueDeckBuilder.com here with a spoiler video for the M19. I apologize for not being on top of these. I've been on vacation, then on to GP Vegas, and then having my teeth drilled into oblivion and refilled. So kind of been out of the whole spoiler thing. A lot of these are fairly new to me. I've skimmed over a bunch of these before. Some of them I saw at GP Vegas. However, we're almost done with the entire spoiler set. So I think that this will be the one and only video I do about the spoiler. There might be a few that come out that are actually, I don't know if are fully spoiled with the mythics or not, or rares, but I think it's mainly just the filler draft that is left from this set. So anyway, this spoiler video, I try to talk about all the aspects of what I do here on the channel. So I might have some financial input for the market. I might have some brewing input for more of the rogue brews, or I might just give my opinion on the card as far as the power level. So if you're looking for just people to read the cards to you, you can go just check that out at Mythic Spoiler or find another spoiler video. So strap yourself in. This tends to be a very long video with a lot of commentary and opinions in it. So let's just go down the list. Instead of going from newest to oldest, let's just go from the mythics down. So the first card here, we have the Ajani, Adversary of Tyrants. It's a 4-mana. I think that I haven't been really impressed with any of the Planeswalkers in M19. I think they're all a little bit overcosted or underpowered for what they do. So keep that in mind with these particular cards. Ajani, Adversary of Tyrants is a 4-mana for a 4 loyalty Planeswalker that puts a +1 counter on each of up to 2 target creatures for its +1. And then its -2 returns a creature card with converted mana cost 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. The -7 is you get an emblem at the beginning of your end step. You can create 3 1/1 cat creature tokens with lifelink. So compare this to like Gideon, another 4-mana Planeswalker that has seen play in the past, or Elspeth. I think this is underpowered compared to those, but we do have some relevant abilities here. We have some interesting abilities here, especially in decks that try to assemble combos or synergies. I do like the -2 because you can actually utilize that twice. You can actually utilize it twice and have it survive if you use the +1 somewhere in the mix there. So the +1 is okay. Put a +1 counter on each of up to 2 target creatures. Sure, I guess it curves quite well on 4. If you have 2 threats out, you can make them slightly bigger. So in that effect, it sort of feels like a Rishkar, as you can continue to do that as time goes on. I don't know where it is. This card will see play in standard at the moment. Again, it feels just kind of awkward. What you want a Planeswalker to be doing is to make your board state a lot more aggressive, or at least protect it. And I think Ajani having a -2 to get back a converted mana cost 2 or less is a little bit lackluster. But again, these are kind of cool little abilities that are attached to Ajani. Then ultimate is also kind of weak compared to, look at the old Liliana that created like zombies equal to number of zombies +1. So it just perpetually got bigger and bigger and bigger army. Whereas this 3/1/1 lifelink cat tokens per turn is a little bit lackluster in my opinion at that point. So I don't think that like Soul Sisters wants this. If we look back in Modern, there's not a lot of decks that I think that right off the bat could utilize it in Standard. It's again quite weak compared to the slots that are surrounding it. All right, so Tezzeret Artifice Master. This is a 5-mana for a 5 loyalty. This is the one that's creating all the buzz today. It is a +1, create a 1/1 colorless Thopter artifact creature token with flying. A 0 is draw a card. If you control 3 or more artifacts, draw 2 cards instead. And the -9 is you get an emblem at the beginning of your end step. Search your library for a permanent card, put on the battlefield, and shuffle your library. Of course, this is pretty, bonkers. Once you do get up to the ultimate, I'm sure commander decks are going to want this particular card in a number of different commander decks. However, again, these 2 abilities also seem very lackluster. The 0 ability is not gaining towards that ultimate to draw the cards, and just creating a 1/1 colorless Thopter artifact creature token feels very, very weak for a 5-mana Planeswalker to immediately +1 it. So not a big fan of Tezzeret like a lot of other people are with the hype around Tezzeret. I can see that this can sort of be like in a control artifact shell, or like an improvise type shell at the moment, and get a lot of card advantage by being able to draw 2 cards per turn. However, it still seems to be a kind of a if you compare it to like the Teferi or other Planeswalkers in this 5-mana slot, it's hard to justify running Tezzeret over those particular cards. Liliana Untouched by Death also has some cool abilities. A 4 mana or 4 loyalty planeswalker for 4 mana. Put the top 3 cards of your library into your graveyard. If one of those is a zombie, each opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. Not a bad ability. Reminds you sort of Chandra, but it's no card advantage there. That is kind of the life advantage is what you're getting at. Plus, you are milling yourself. So any strategy that does want to fill up the graveyard, I could see this being included in the deck. The -2 is target creature gets negative X and X, where X is the number of zombies you control. That, to me, is quite tough to really have it impact where you want it to be. I would rather have it be like a -3, create a 2/2 zombie, and then target creature gets negative X, where X is the number of zombies you control, without creating a zombie. This feels very, very awkward. I understand like in a curve of a zombie, but you're also like at that point competing with other cards that just make your zombie army bigger. Again, I'm not really a fan of the -2 ability. The -3 ability is kind of cool that you may cast zombie cards from your graveyard this turn. So that's where I think the silver lining for this particular card is you can definitely like +1 it, and then the next turn you can -3 and potentially cast maybe 2 or 3 zombies that turn, especially if there's a bunch of 1-drops that are in your graveyard at that time. So there might be some infinite combos you can definitely do with this. In fact, I actually can see some infinite combos with cards like the Phyrexian Altar in Commander, and then just being able to cast zombie cards from your graveyard, rinse and repeat, and have like a Blood Arse effect. So right there, like just a Gravecrawler or any other 1 mana zombie, any sort of sack outlet that gains you mana, like either Earthcraft or Phyrexian Altar, and then a Blood Artist can just win the game. So Liliana, I think, will be pretty popular in the EDH for that, but standard, this is still a card that I think is very lackluster in power. So then we go into Sarkhan Fireblood. People are very split in the community about this particular card, as it's a 3 mana for a 3 loyalty planeswalker, 1 and 2 red. The +1 is you may discard a card if you do draw a card, which is kind of awkward. I mean, it does work with, like, some people are saying this is exactly what like a dredge type ability. I mean, red does like this, discarding then drawing, because you can put a card in the graveyard that then has some sort of ability to then draw a card. So of course it enables dredge. However, I'm not sure that's where dredge wants to be as a 3 mana planeswalker. And in standard, that feels kind of weak for a planeswalker then that only has 4 loyalty that's easy to ping down, or maybe your opponents don't even care about this particular card because the other abilities just add 2 mana of any combination of colors. Spend this to cast dragons. Maybe you don't care about a 7 mana dragon coming out on the next turn. There are already cards that can add for 2 mana that don't have the restrictions. So again, this card I can see maybe in a really focused dragon deck, using the +1 to fix, discarding a card you may not need, and digging towards a dragon, and then the next turn you can add essentially you'll have 4 mana on board, and then the 2 mana from the Sarkhan. And then so a 6 mana dragon it could definitely synergize with. But again, that seems like it's very restrictive in where that can actually see play. The ultimate's also a whopping -7 to create 4 5/5 red dragon creature tokens with flying. That's a pretty decent ability, but that will require a lot of tick ups to actually get there. So I could see maybe in a red deck sort of being the control, but I think that you have to run this card later on, like something like turn 5, so you can drop the Sarkhan and then protect it. Or I think at that point you need to actually create a board state where you can protect Sarkhan to get to the 4 5/5 red dragon creature tokens. But we've seen other cards in the past easier to establish this sort of win condition than Sarkhan Fireblood. Then we have Vivian Reed, which is a 5 mana for a 5 loyalty planeswalker. You look at the top 4 cards of your library and reveal a creature or a land card from among them, and put the rest on the bottom of your library in any random order. And then the -3 is destroy an artifact, enchantment, or creature with flying. And -8 is you get an MMO creature you control, get +2/+2, and have vigilance, trample, indestructible. So it is another one of those kind of filter through, draw some cards. It has a nice little ability of killing creatures with flying, artifacts, and enchantments. So this does feel very much like a decent sideboard card that you can bring in versus control or any of those decks that do utilize artifacts, enchantments, or creatures. But it's, again, very lackluster for its +1 comparison to other planeswalkers in the past. And the emblem, too, is actually pretty decent with the indestructibility clause there, but it is something you have to work towards and hard to get off. So all of these planeswalkers I don't think are really standouts. That's probably where planeswalkers should be. Magic has been plagued in the past by creating too powerful of planeswalkers, and then they just completely crowd that space, and it's hard to justify running anything over them, as planeswalkers seem to be very versatile, very powerful, and can act as I mean, they usually do double duty. So the utility of them is quite good. They can act as board stabilizers, finishers, control cards, draw cards, all in one. So these ones I think are a lot more fair than ones in the past. I think that none of them I can see is really seeing play as 4-ofs in a lot of decks, but we should see quantities in these in standard in the foreseeable future. All right, so then we have the first Mythic Blue, which is Resplendent Angel. This is a 3 mana for a 3/3 Flying Angel. So right there, that's a pretty decent little curve there. At the beginning of each end step, if you gain 5 or more life this turn, create a 4/4 white angel creature token with Flying and Vigilance. And then for 6 mana, you can give Resplendent Angel +2/+2 and lifelink. So you have a way to actually trigger off this ability. I think it's very tough on turn 3 or turn 4 to really gain that 5 life. I'm not seeing where I want it in standard at the moment. There are a couple cards that can like gain 6 life or even 5 life. There are a few cards that can do so. But it seems very awkward to be running them just to trigger off the Resplendent Angel, just to get a 4/4 white angel creature token with Flying and Vigilance. Where this does get good is once Lyra has created the first token. Once you've created the first token, then you have Lyra. Each one of those angels then attacking or blocking will create you another one. So I'm not going to discount this card. In the right scenario, I think that this card can see play. However, right now it's competing with cards like History of Benalia, and there's a ton of cards in this sort of 3-drop slot that it has to you have to justify playing over it, even in Tribal Angel. But Tribal Angel does seem kind of interesting at the moment. We have 3, 4, 5, nice little curve with the angels, and then there are some cards that actually do gain life that can trigger this off. And start the production of these angels. So more of a casual card than I would say than necessarily a competitive card, especially since Lightning Strike is indefinitely getting a reprint and going to be in the format for quite some time. That's kind of going to keep this card definitely from its potential of I mean, you just compare this with something like Chain Whirler, and it's tough to really see where Resplendent Angel is going to fit in this format. We have an Omniscience reprint. This is actually a pretty decent card. For standard even at the moment, because I could actually see this being used as win con and then being able to cast through your deck. However, this card was just one of those cards that was on the list for a reprint. So let me talk about this in a financial standpoint. It was something I was going to do for Market Monday this week and then just got busy and distracted. I think this is a huge signal. This reminds me of Conspiracy and Conspiracy 2 targeting all of the cards from Legacy that was above $10 to $15. So between Eternal Masters, Iconic Masters, Masters 25, Conspiracy 1, and Conspiracy 2, there are very, very few non-reserve list cards above the $10, $15 mark that haven't seen a reprint. So I think that the core sets are going to be, this is a huge clue to us that core sets are going to be used for reprinting cards that are hard to reprint in block sets because of just the names of the planes and the characters in the planes and just the mechanics. Not enough design space to do so. So core sets are going to be the place they're going to stick these in. Core sets traditionally have sold quite poorly compared to other sets. So this will also be some incentive to have people purchase these particular packs by throwing things like Omniscience into the pack. So again, if you have any cards that haven't seen a reprint, I think M20 right before M20 comes out next year, you need to unload them all. So we should probably be looking at a list of cards that are right for the reprint. I mean, Scapeshift is one coming up we'll talk about, and these were very, very specific cards that they were targeting with these kind of parameters in mind for reprints. All right, so on to Bone Dragon, a 5-mana, 5/4 flying. Exile 7 other cards from your graveyard and can return Bone Dragon from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. I've always thought these abilities are quite good to get something for nothing. So, of course, in a dedicated mill strategy, this is just something you can bring back for 5 mana. It's pretty reasonable compared to some that have been in the past, which is 7 cards from your graveyard. But a lot of other dredge cards want the cards in the graveyard. So Modern, I just don't quite think it's going to be powerful enough. But I could definitely see this seeing play as standard. In a mill type strategy or just a strategy that puts a lot of cards in the graveyard as a 5/4 that can at least come back, it's very comparable to an ability that already happens right now with the Embalm / Eternalize, and those you just have to cast from the graveyard. That's that. but then they exile themselves. This does not exile itself, so theoretically you can cast this more than one time. But 7 cards, that's very, very... That's a huge amount of cards you have to get from your graveyard. So it's over 10% of your deck. So anyway, Bone Dragon, 5/4 flying for 5 mana is pretty decent, especially it does survive the Glorybringer at the moment because it is a dragon, so the Glorybringer can't deal the damage to the dragon. So I can see the C play in like a black control deck or kind of a black mid-range deck as the finisher. Apex of Power, this is a 10 mana spell. You exile the top 7 cards of your library, and until a turn you may cast non-land cards exiled this way. If a spell was cast from your hand, add 10. If this spell was cast from your hand, add 10 mana of any color mana pool. So once you get up to 10, it's basically you get to cast 10 mana worth of cards from your deck. So I do like this card in a commander deck. I know this is going to go into is my Nahab deck. That's one of the problems with Nahab is card draw, and it's very easy to get the mana, and this is going to be able to dig for extra combat phases. Standard, I could see this seeing some sort of play, but again, this is really, really rough to get up to 10 mana. At that point, you can do possibly better things that don't require like really rolling the dice of what's on top of your library. So it's a cute little card, definitely EDH playable. I doubt it's going to see any sort of modern playable, but it does have this crazy power level of going through 10 cards of your deck. So I guess I won't discount it, but it's gonna be tough. I don't see Storm playing this, as there's just better ways to assemble what you want to get going. But we have seen cards like Epic Experiment run very similar to Apex of Power, and 10 mana isn't unheard of for those type of decks. But again, I think it's more of a wishful thinking than is actually going to see a lot of play. Scapeshift, I actually like Scapeshift as a reprint for this particular standard set. I think there's a lot of utility lands between the deserts that like the Oasis and the Ifnir Deadlands, as well as like even it can complement Hour of Promise to go get specific lands. Also, we do have Crucible of Worlds that did get a reprint, as well as we still have the Ramanoop Excavator that also works alongside with Scapeshift. So I could definitely see a lands utility deck starting to see play. We did see one see play for a little bit with Hour of Promise and a few cards that work around that. So keep your eye on Scapeshift. This guy actually could be powerful enough in Standard. Of course, this is just a necessary reprint as this card was approaching, $70 before it was reprinted. And it's going to just add the equity value to people wanting to crack packs for the M19. All right, so we have some uncommons here. I think there's a few more mythics down in a bit. We have the Mare cycle. So we have the Shield Mare, and this one can't be blocked by red creatures, 3 mana for a 2/3. And when it enters the battlefield, or becomes a target of a spell or ability an opponent controls, you gain 3 life. So this is actually a pretty decent red. I don't know. It's can't be blocked by red creatures is kind of lackluster because I don't think you want to be going on the offensive a lot of times versus red decks. You need to be on the defensive, other than it does gain you that 3 life. And then if they do decide to kill it, it's another 3 life. But it doesn't block Chain Whirler and survive to tell the tale. There's also, it doesn't block really anything out of red at the moment, and I guess it can gain you 3 life if Glorybringer shoots it down, but a lot of times they didn't care at that point. Getting rid of a blocker just for them to gain 3 life is probably not even that relevant at that point. So Shield Mare is one of them. The 3 life is kind of cool for the 3 mana. Of course, this does work with the other horse. We finally get a horse, not a Pegasus or a unicorn. We actually get a horse that synergizes with the Crested Sunmare, and that's kind of neat. But other than that, there are already other cards, like there's a vampire, a 3/2 vampire that gains 4 life when it comes into play. Would this take the slot of it? I'm not quite sure for those particular sideboards that are trying to hate out like the damage production of red. All right, we have the Surge Mare. This is a 2 mana for a 0/5. Can't be blocked by green creatures. When it deals whenever Surge Mare deals damage to an opponent, you can draw a card and then discard a card. And then it's got the 2 mana, it gets +2, -2, so you can actually use that twice to make it a 4/1. Again, this does feel sort of like a lackluster card, but we have seen cards like this see play in Standards of the past. There was the Is It card, the 1/4 that you can switch the power and toughness around that was pretty decent. And it's all right. It's not bad. 0/5 for 2 mana, great little blocker, and can actually be turned on the aggression. I do like this card. All of the Mares I really, really like for limited. However, constructed, I think they're just a little bit not quite there, in my opinion. All right, so the Plague Mirror is the black version. Is 2 black and 1. And this one is when it enters the battlefield, creatures your opponents control get -1/-1 until end of turn, and it can't be blocked by white creatures. So this is like the black's version of the Goblin Chain Whirler. It does not deal the damage to an opponent. It doesn't have first strike. It's definitely dumbed down compared to the Chain Whirler. However, this is a decent little ability. I think it will completely replace the I guess the one that we have right now is -2/-2 all creatures. So this is definitely a decent little sideboard card for a lot of these like mid-range black decks or tempo black decks we're seeing right now that can clear some tokens. And if you actually are going against tokens or going against a lot of creatures your opponent controls that have 1 power or 1 toughness, So those are still the Beaumont Curries or Shaker Kenras, the Llanowar Elves, those type of cards that are seeing play at the moment. Speaking of 1 toughness creature, we have the Lightning Mare. This is a 2 mana, can't be countered and blocked by blue creatures, and it gets +1/+0 until end of turn for spending 2 mana. At the moment, there's not a lot of like blue creatures people are throwing down to clog the board. Blue is using cards like Blink of the Eye. They're using a lot of Essence Scatter. They're using white or black as the other color that is going to keep the board clear. So this ability right now isn't too relevant. It still dies to basically all of the removal spells. And the Fire Breathing for 2 mana is also quite lackluster. So not a fan of this card either for constructed. It might see some play if we do see some kind of like I said, the blue roadblocks. However, those aren't found at the moment in standard. All right, so Vine Mare, this is the most expensive of the mares, being green. This is a 5/3 for 4 mana, 2 and 2 green. I should actually bring this up on the screen. Didn't notice it off the screen there. Vine Mare can't be blocked by black creatures and has hexproof. I think this is the one that actually has it's probably the one that has the most likelihood of seeing play just because of the lack of hexproof cards we have in the format. Hexproof is traditionally a headache for a lot of decks to deal with. However, we have the Settle the Wreckage that just completely gets around hexproof at the moment. So if we ever do find some sort of strategy that does try to pump up 1 creature, again, this is a pretty decent little card for that particular strategy. However, I think all of these have been dumbed down on power level to where they actually do see play. Vine Mare, I would say, is the best one out of them. All right, so on to the next chunk of cards. We have the Isolate, which exiles target permanent with converted mana cost 1. I think this card's actually very, very decent and almost feels like a spell snare to me, but of course for converted mana cost 1. And there are actually quite a bit of cards in Modern that have a converted mana cost 1, like Aether Vials. There is many creatures like Death Shadow. There are the Birds of Paradise type cards. So probably more of a sideboard card than, stick it in any Modern deck, because Modern does have like a lot of 1 and 2 costs, and a lot of times it won't hit what you need to hit. So it's not going to hit like Young Pyromancers or Tarmogoyfs or that type of stuff. But there are some pesky 1 mana artifacts that this can get rid of. Think of Lantern Control. That's a lot of cards out of that deck that it can actually take care of. And it's just permanent with converted mana cost 1. So again, I'm sure this is going to have more use than people expect and won't be as narrow as we think. But to me, it is more of a sideboard if there ever is a 1 mana converted mana cost card that is being very tricky for people to deal with. I think this will be able to answer that. All right, so we have the Nexus of Fate, which is take an extra turn after this one. If Nexus of Fate would be put into the graveyard from anywhere, reveal it and shuffle it into your library. So they don't want a graveyard recursion with this spell. They want you to have to draw into it. And it's a take an extra turn for 7 mana. And this is the Buy a Box promo. So I do believe that's the only way you can get it. So apparently that might be an issue. Traditionally, these, though, have been 6 mana. So this is like strictly worse than a lot of these that have been printed in the more recent past. We have the Fraying Omnipotence. This is a 5 mana, 3 and 2 black. Each player loses half their life, then discards half the cards of their hand, then sacrifice half the creatures they control, and you round up. This is actually a very interesting card, especially if you pair it with Torment of Hailfire, because it can actually get rid of the vast majority of cards, half your opponent's abilities to deal with the Torment of Hailfire the next round over. However, I don't know if those two would synergize greatly. There is a commander deck. I'm going to throw this in immediately. Noth of the Guiltleaf, I think, definitely wants this deck, as it does take care of at least half your opponent's creatures and half their cards and half their life, and then you can create a bunch of tokens with it. And usually that's what you look for in Noth the Guiltleaf, is multiple discards, not just one or two. If you can get people to discard 3, 4, that's where it really shines. So that's exactly where for Omnipotence is going to happen. It is kind of awkward, though, in Standard, being a 5-mana spell that doesn't even get rid of the best cards in the hand or the best cards on the board. So keep that in mind. We have the Mage, the Piramonte Destenhaussel. So what this one does say is it's discard a card to draw a card for red for 2 and 2. It's a 2/2 for 2 mana. And the 3 mana is you can sacrifice it to deal 4 damage to a creature. So it's got a lot of utility there. It's a reverse looter. However, you do have to spend the mana every time you use it. I think the kind of the more of the story for the M19 is a lot of these specific cards here are like really dumbed down in the power level, in my opinion, to where they should be to be playable. And this is a great example that I don't think that this card necessarily needs the mana activation for the reverse looting. Again, you can say maybe then like Dredge will really like it, because again, reverse looting does break certain mechanics. However, I don't know. They already have like access to cards that already do this, and they aren't seeing play. So we'll have to wait and see about this card. I could be evaluating this card incorrectly. Next card, I don't think I've actually seen this one. This is Thorn Lieutenant. This is an elf warrior for a 2/3 for 2 mana. Whenever Thorn Lieutenant becomes the target of a spell or ability opponent controls, you create a 1/1 elf warrior creature token. And then for 5 and a green, it gets +4/+4 until end of turn. Pretty decent little card. It's got a nice little body for when it comes out as a 2/3. And, it's strictly just better than a bear. And if they do answer it, then you at least get a 1/1 green elf warrior creature token. It's pretty weak, though, in my opinion. Again, it just seems to be not quite where it needs to be to see play. This is definitely something that is more of a limited, but at rare, it's just kind of awkward. So, yeah, I'm not a fan of this card. Now, after analyzing it, all right, we have Lina, Selfless Champion. This is a 6-mana 3/3. When Lina, Selfless Champion, enters the battlefield, create a 1/1 white soldier creature token for each non-token creature control. And then you can sacrifice Lina, Selfless Champion to give all of your creatures indestructible. So it is something, but 6 mana, that is rough for a Selfless Spirit ability. You do get to create a 1/1 white soldier creature token. I think this would be playable if it was a 2/2 knight. 6 mana is very, very high. You have to have, if you compare this with other ones in the past, like the Captain of the Watch, or a lot of them are 5 mana, they automatically create like 3 tokens. You have to have at least other 3 non-token creatures out. So on curve, yes, in the ideal scenario, you could probably create 3. 4 is pretty stretching it. Limited, great. Constructed, unplayable, in my opinion. Djinn of Wishes. This is a 5-mana flying. It enters the battlefield with 3 wish counters. It's a reprint, I believe. And then you can remove a wish counter to reveal the top card of your library. You may play that card without paying its mana cost if you didn't exile it. Okay, remove a wish counter from Djinn of Wish. Reveal the top card of your library. You may play that card without paying its mana cost if you don't exile it. Okay, so that is, it's a decent little card. Again, great card in limited. Very, very tough for constructed. This just seems to be like such a limited, like these cards. A lot of them I don't see them seeing play. Okay, we have the Graveyard Marshal. This is a double black for a 3/2. So again, it's strictly better than a bear, and has the ability to 2 and a black to exile creature card from your graveyard to create a tap 2/2 black zombie creature token. Limited bomb. Constructed playable, yes, but barely there. I think in a zombie, this could bring back Zombie Tribal from Amonkhet. I think we do have enough cards. So it's not bad. This is not a bad card. This is one of the better cards we've come across so far. The activation is a little bit steep, but it's okay. It's almost like Scrapheap Scrounger to bring back a 2/2 zombie creature token. Not quite a 3/2 every time, but it's not bad at all. Still dies a lot of shock abilities, and that is going to be tricky to keep this sucker alive. But I am looking forward to trying to build Zombie Tribal in Standard. I think it's actually viable again. Alrighty, so we have the Demanding Dragon, 5 mana for a 5/5. When Demanding Dragon enters the battlefield, it deals 5 damage deals 5 damage to target opponent unless that player sacrifices a creature. A lot of people are talking how this is very similar to Glorybringer. However, Glorybringer is a rinse and repeat activation. This does have a bigger butt on it as a 5/5 for 5 rather than a 4/4. However, you don't get to target the specific creatures, which is huge because I can tell you cards like Vizier of the Menagerie are completely unplayable right now because of Glorybringer, whereas Demanding Dragon, you wouldn't even care with the Vizier of the Menagerie. The body, though, does make this more relevant. A 5/5 flying for 5 mana is quite good with a little bit of an upside, especially if the board is cleared. It's going to be a 5/5 and 5 damage when it comes into play, so I'm going to wait to see if decks can actually utilize this as their top end. We're losing Hazoret, we're losing Chandra, but I mean, this is still competing with something like Charging Monster Storm, which has haste right when it comes into play. So I don't even know if this is strictly better than Charging Monster Storm for that. And then we also have the Ashcloud Phoenix. Good news is this does block the Ashcloud Phoenix, or it does, attack through. Other than the Ashcloud Phoenix, just blocks and puts 0/1. So kind of awkward again. Kind of not quite there to definitely see the play. But maybe this is a power reset. Maybe that's the way that we're going. Kaladesh is by far the most powerful set we've had in a long time in Standard. It is still, the vast majority of decks really are a lot of Kaladesh cards. And when you take away the Kaladesh cards, a lot of them are the specific pieces for those decks, and it's hard to kind of recoup them. I think the exception to that is like the blue-white controls. Don't really hurt that much from, well, I guess Omniket, though, at that point does hurt those cards. So we are going to see a big shift post-rotation in some of these cards. If there is a power reset, these could start to see play. However, Dominaria cards, if you compare them side to side by core sets, seem a little bit more, powerful. Anyway, we have the next card that I have to look up is the Runic Armisar. The Runic Armisar is a 3 mana, 1 in GG for a dinosaur. Whenever opponent activates an ability of a creature or land, if it isn't a mana ability, you may draw a card. This is going to hose a lot of different creatures. Unfortunately, it doesn't work with planeswalkers, but there is plenty of cards that do get activated, lands and creatures that have activations. We're talking about like Flip Legion Landings or Search for Azcanta when it flips. We have plenty of activated abilities like Ronus or Oketcher, all the gods they activate to get the most value out of them. Doesn't hit mana dorks though. But again, this is a nice little body on it for a 3 mana. It gets pretty decent also in Modern. There are some times where this might see play, like a green-black rock type strategy might bring it in post-board versus particular decks that have a lot of activated abilities. However, I don't know, Modern at this point doesn't have a ton of them that I think is relevant. Standard 2 is actually quite lackluster with activated abilities. Farm creatures, that's why Harsh Mentor doesn't see a ton of play. Of course, Walking Ballista is the exception to that rule. As Walking Ballista, this just it makes it pathetic. If they have to use a Walking Ballista, you're going to draw a ton of cards. And even if they want to pump up the Walking Ballista, you're going to draw a ton of cards. So I like it for that. It's also not terrible in a dinosaur deck because I think the 2/5 body is pretty good. We already have the 3/4, but the 3/4 Thrashing Bronton at the moment dies to Glorybringer. This one doesn't. I would like to see like Reach on this or something else to just push it a little bit higher. But this is a fairly playable card with, again, more of a sideboard implication than anything. But the 2/5 body is very relevant in this format. The Fight with Fire is the one card I can think of that can just take care of this. Chandra can't even take care of this card with the -4. Alrighty, so on to the next one. We have the Leonin Warleader. This is a 4 mana. Whenever Leonin Warleader attacks, create 2 1/1 white creature tokens with lifelink that are tapped and attacking. So this is like a Brimaz type card. I actually do like this. The 4/4 body is very, very potent. And you're creating 2 1/1 white creature tokens tapped and attacking with lifelink for 4 mana. This is one of those tempo control cards that is perfect for a finisher for like white-blue. You put it out, you protect it. It's only a few turns before it's just going to win the game. It's going to attack for 6 the first attack, then the next attack is going to attack for 8, and the next attack is going to attack for lethal at that point. After they've created these 1/1 white creature tokens, then you have some chump blockers, for example. They're actually pretty relevant with a lot of the cat. It curves right now with the cat right now that puts out it gives all cat creatures +1/+1. So not bad at all. I think this is one of the more playable cards again as a 4/4 for 4. It does what you want it to do at the moment in standard. But again, this is more of the shell of putting out a this reminds me a lot of like how Bermaz or Hero Bladehold worked. All right, so we have the Mystic Archaeologist. This is a 2 mana for a 2/1 to draw 2 cards for 5 mana at rare. Ugh. I mean, I get it. It's a card that can come out early. It doesn't really have any of the abilities other than that. Limited bomb, kind of awkward. Again, they're comparing it to Azure Mage, just like a strictly better Azure Mage. But Azure Mage, great in limited. Didn't really see play outside of it. I don't know. All right, so we have the Liliana's Contract. This is a 5 mana. When it enters the battlefield, you draw 4 cards and you lose 4 life. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 4 or more demons with different names, you win the game. So another I win type card, but that's pretty tough to do. There are quite a few demons at the moment in the standard format, and there is actually another 4-drop demon. So is there a 3-drop at the moment? I can't remember if there is. You can go 3, 4, then 5, and then... But it's kind of tough. This is a tough card. It is an enchantment that sticks out. You draw 4 cards and lose 4 life. I think that's cool right there for a lot of EDH decks, as that's a lot of cards off of 1 card for 5 mana. That's very comparable to a lot of the cards you're going to use for blue for putting 5 mana into it. Like you are losing life though instead of Sphinx's Revelation gaining life, but it's a kind of neat little card. I typically don't like the I win button type stuff of it, though. I wish it would have done something different with demons rather than just winning the game. Just a preference. I don't like those in Magic. But, people get to play the game however they feel inclined to do so. All right, so Spit Flame is a 3 mana to do 4 damage to target creature, and then whenever a dragon enters the battlefield under your control, you may play a red. If you do, return Spirit Flame from your graveyard to your hand. One of the things that is already kind of awkward with this card is... It is a lot of times you want to curve perfectly with your dragons so you don't have the mana available. But with cards like Chandra that can pump towards stuff, you might have some unused mana. We already do have some relevant dragons in the format. We have Glorybringer. We also have the 4/4 for 4 mana and the kicker that puts another 4/4. We're getting, of course, the 5/5 for 5. And where I do like the Spit Flame, though, is I don't think this is improbable to actually play in a deck that, like the card I really like this with is the Zendikar card that spits out a 5/5 dragon whenever you have 7 more lands each turn. So this allows you to have a rinse and a repeat removal spell that actually isn't too terrible at 3 mana. So where I like this, I have an old Martyr proc deck that does run, I can't remember what that dragon's called, that could actually use this because the colors are red and white, and you do want the recurring removal, and basically this 4 damage does take care of the vast majority of cards in Modern. It's instant speed, and it is a rinse and repeat ability. So, and that's exactly how you want to play Martyr proc, because you really want to control out the game until you have established a win condition. And to me, like this could be, you're creating 5/5 dragons at that point. Maybe there's a better recurring dragon theme than what I'm thinking of, but I think that's what you want. You want to be utilizing this with dragons that are cheap, either really cheaply costed or have ways to just pump out dragons. So even the Sarkhan that adds a dragon token every time, that's pretty decent too. So this is definitely a build around card. It's going to be tough to build around it, but dragons are getting closer and closer to actually seeing some sort of play in like Modern. The problem with Modern though is the more sets come out, the more degenerate it becomes. So cards that were almost playable become less playable, but still, it's a nice little build around card, and I like Spit Flame. Goreclaw, Terror of Kalsima. Okay, so this is a 4/3 for 4 mana. This is the card that everyone's outraged about because it is now a legendary bear that doesn't work with bears, so it doesn't work with 2/2s. Creature spells you cast with power 4 or greater cost 2 less to cast, and whenever the Goreclaw Terror of Kalsima attacks each creature you control with power 4 or greater, gets +1/+1 and gains trample until turn. This is kind of cool with creature spells with power 4 or less with artifacts. I can see this breaking a lot of crazy artifact decks where there's already some reductions in cost, and then you can throw these out for free because it does reduce. And same thing with Eldrazi. Eldrazi is like Thought-Knot Seer. That's 2 reduced mana towards Thought-Knot Seer. Is that good enough? I'm not sure. It does even pump them up when it attacks. At least it's a 4/3 body. I think that this is something, as far as a commander, to pump out like very, very quick threats, like the Reality Smashers, like the Thought-Knot Seers, like even like Hollow One, for example, it gets reduced. It's a neat little ability. There's also a lot of 3 mana 4/2s in the format already that I could maybe see costing less. Look at Ronus. Ronus now costs 1 mana to bring out, and it all automatically turns on Ronus. So that's kind of cool. But beyond that, though, it again becomes very an awkward card. You just take care of it. It doesn't get any residual ability out of it. Like where I do see this too is I have been trying to build a legendary Stompy deck. So we're thinking Traxos. Again, this reduces Traxos so now Traxos only costs a whopping 2 mana to throw out. It will untap Traxos if you play it. It works with Ronus. It works with even like the Verdurous Gearhulk costs less to cast. So I can definitely see this. But the thing is, though, it incentivizes this really, 4, 5, 6, 7 turn, which in Standard right now is tough to really play that route because you're looking down the scope or the barrel of 2 different guns here with that are winning the game in different ways by that time. You're looking at hyper aggressive red decks that are just going to try to kill you, and you're looking at control decks that once they get up to like Approach the Second Sun or Tezzeret, they just win the game. So I don't know where this type of card fits in because of that awkward mid-range ability at the moment. We are not in a mid-range format. We're not in a value format. We are in a heavy control and a heavy aggro format. So that's kind of what's going wrong with Goreclaw. But just off the top of my head, like Ronus, Traxos, there are some cards right now in Standard that are synergized quite well with Goreclaw. And the Trample is not bad too. Ronus wants Trample. Death Touch Trample is huge. You swing in right there for what, a 6/6 with Trample on the turn after. So we're not going to... I'm not going to discount Goreclaw. Dinosaurs, it reduces a bunch of stuff. You can chain off dinosaurs. I don't know. This is pretty cool. Pretty cool card. All right, so we're on to the Valiant Knight. Apologies, this is a long-ass video, but we're almost through the relevant cards. Valiant Knight is a 4 mana for a 3/4. Other knights you control get ++1, and I could just control get double strike. Completely, it's very, very tough for this card to see play in Standard or Constructed just because of how much it costs and how much the ability costs, but it's very good in Limited. There might be some cheesy knight decks that can utilize this. Usually 4 mana for a Lord is very awkward. It can give, a lot of your knights already have double strike. There's already a Lord that gives double strike to your first strikers, and basically most of the knights have first strike. So Call the Cavalry, History of Benalia, sure. I can see History of Benalia, then Valiant Knight, and you swing in for what, 3, and then the turn after you create, so you create another one on that turn, then the turn after Benalia triggers and you give double strike and it's way lethal at that point. But yeah, that's probably more wishful thinking than will actually happen. Okay, we have the Supreme Phantom. This is a 2 mana 1/3 other spirits you control get +1/+1. I do like this card because I do think that this is something that might make spirits more playable in Modern. We do have a 3 mana Lord that gives +1/+1 to all spirits. Supreme Phantom has a lot of good synergy with cards like the what's the one I use in Spectral Processions or Lingering Souls. It also, traditionally people have in those type of decks have had to use like the Honor the Pures to pump up. Now you have a body that can actually do that, can actually be cast off Aether Vial that spirits are already using, makes Spellqueller into a 3/4, so that means that you can dodge Lightning Bolt, or what's really cool about that is you can flash in the Supreme Phantom off of an Aether Vial to protect a Lightning Bolt to the Spellqueller. So I think this card is very, very playable. Right now, Rattle Chains is in that slot, and I'm not sure which one's better in this slot, but this is a 2 mana Lord that's with flying. This is a powerful card. We have a 3 mana Lord that then gives Hexproof. I could definitely see a Merfolk-esque type build for spirits now. So this is absolutely, in my opinion, going to see play at some time or another. One of the more powerful cards in this set. And yeah, I'm glad because I invested a crap ton in MT Joe's Spellquellers, and hopefully this gives me a little bit of a bump as I am hurting right now. I'm down about 40% of my investment for Spellcrawlers, mainly because Spellcrawler just really fell off the... It was seen playing like 5 different decks, and I think 3 of those decks now cease to exist on Modern in any sort of common use. We still have Bant Spirits and Bant Nightfall that do use Spellcrawler consistently. But a lot of the Jeskai tempos and blue-white tempos no longer use Spellcrawler. All right, so we have the Phylactery Lich. This is a 3 mana for a 5/5. Enters the battlefield, put a counter on an artifact. When you control no counters on artifacts, the Lich will die. It has indestructible. I'm pretty sure this can... If we have any other indestructible, I'm not sure if we do have indestructible cards right now in Standard. I don't know if they put the Darksteel Citadel in this particular... I don't think it's been spoiled if it has. This is traditionally where you use the Lich, but that means you're off curve with the Lich, is you put it on indestructible. But we already have some artifacts right now that are pretty decent to throw this on. They have to kill that artifact then to kill the Lich. So not a bad card, could see play as a 5/5 indestructible for 3 mana. We have the Goblin Trashmaster. This is a 4 mana for a 3/3. Other goblins you control get +1/+1, and you can sacrifice a goblin to destroy target artifact. A lot of people have been talking about this as the synergy, or the Kaladesh Hosing could be a theme. It also works with Chain Whirler, which is one of the most played cards. Works with Fanatical Firebrand. Can work with the Siege Gang Commander. It also works with a lot of the other kind of Goblin Lord type cards we have, the reducing haste. Not a bad card whatsoever. Going to be a great card in Commander, though, as its ways to destroy your opponent's artifacts, which artifacts is a huge deal in Commander. So I definitely expect this card to be very popular. We have the Hungering Hydra. This is an X mana and a green for a 0/0. Enters the battlefield with X +1 counters on it. Can't be blocked by more than one creature. And whenever it's dealt damage, put that many +1 counters on it. Kind of cool little... it's getting all the abilities of the Hydra, which is pretty sweet. So getting bigger every time damage is done to it, and it also enters pretty big. So I'm sure this will be a casual favorite. We have the Cleansing Nova. This is going to be the replacement for Fumigate. This can either destroy artifacts and enchantments or creatures. This will definitely see play in Standard once Fumigate rotates out as the preferred board wipe, and probably a companion piece to settle the wreckage. The ability for this to actually hit artifacts and enchantments will also take care of pesky artifacts and enchantments. This might make the Seal Away, Cast Out type strategy not as good, as you can then, kill all the enchantments to get stuff back. So that's definitely a welcoming card. Modern, I think this also could see play. I understand it's 5 mana compared to Wrath of God, but sometimes you need to destroy artifacts and enchantments. Think of decks like Kraut-Klein Ironworks. It is slow versus that, or Affinity, or Lantern, but it's still something that does give you at least a sideboard card that can come in versus those particular decks. So, not a bad card. Sai, Master Thopterus. This is another pretty sweet card. 3 mana for a 1/4. Whenever you cast an artifact spell, create a 1/1 colorless artifact creature token with flying, and you can sacrifice 2 artifacts to draw a card. This card is pretty bonkers, in my opinion, because you can create a net up in mana, especially like cards like it works with Mox Amber to get a 1/1 Thopter and also produce mana if you need to sacrifice it to draw a card. But, where this really does shine is whenever you cast an artifact spell, create a 1/1 Thopter. That's huge. That's value off of a 3 mana for a 1/4. It's going to really flood the board very quickly. We have cards like Paradoxical Outcome already that is all about flooding artifacts out. And this is a pretty decent card right now. Lots of synergies. Think about one of my favorite cards right now with the... why can't I think of that now? The Marionette Master that wants artifacts to then be able to die. This is a sweet card. Open the Graves. 5 mana for a whenever a non-token creature you control dies, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. I can definitely see a lot of infinite combos happening with this in Commander, as a lot of zombies do come back, like Gravecrawler. This is a perfect example. Rinse and repeat with Gravecrawler, Phyrexian Altar, make infinite mana, infinite tokens. Not a bad card, I would say, in Standard, as you at least get some residual cards back. This is definitely another one of those limited cards. So pretty cool. I think 5 mana is pretty steep for this ability. Banefire, X in a red, deals X damage to a target, can't be countered if X is 5 or greater, can be countered or prevented. So Banefire does get a reprint. This is a decent little fireball. Traditionally, these do see play every now and again in Standards. And, yep. Elvish Clancaller, a 2 mana lord for elves. So, again, they're downshifting a lot of these to 2 mana. I do think Elves in Modern probably does want this, and it allows you to search for another one. So, if you have a lot of mana, you can just keep pumping out more of these and then pump the rest of your team. So EDH decks are going to love this card. Modern deck probably. I don't know if it absolutely has room for this, but it's another option. Remorseful Cleric. This is another goodie. 2 mana for a 2/1. You can sacrifice Remorseful Cleric, exile cards from target player's graveyard. So this is going to hate out the dredge. This is going to hate out. This is definitely, I think this might replace Rest in Peace in my Soul Sisters build, but probably not, because Rest in Peace, you just stick it out and then it does its duty. However, it's definitely a pretty sweet little ability. For standard, it will keep graveyard decks in check, and I think this will see modern play. Spirits is another. This might push Spirits over the top. It might give them another card that can hose out particular decks. The 2/1 flying for 2 mana is very relevant. I wonder if Spirits is actually playable right now in standard. We'll have to go through the amount of Spirits. Usually Spirits is such an evergreen tribal that every set has at least some sort of Spirits in it. So we might be able to even throw together. I know we just got out of a Spirit set with Innistrad, but there might be enough just lingering around, pun intended, in standard to actually make one with the Lord. And we still have Metallic Mimic too, which is an honorary spirit. 1 with a machine, 4 mana, draw cards equal to the highest converted mana cost among artifacts you control. Not bad at all for the commander. It's going to be a little bit tough to play in standard at the moment. We do have cards like the what's the one, the Marvel, right? No, not Marvel. The one that untaps everything, Paradox Engine. I could see maybe some sort of Paradox Engine, because again, you're casting this, untapping your permanents, and drawing 6 cards. Seems pretty bonkers to me. So there is a lot of artifacts right now that do have a steep cost. We have the 3 mana Death Baron reprint. Skeletons and zombies get +1/+1 Death Touch. So again, this is another reason why I do think that Zombie Tribal could be relevant. Death Touch is absolutely relevant in this format, and the +1/+1 is also good. So this is also another expensive card that got a reprint. Sarkhan's Unsealing, 4 mana. Whenever you cast a creature spell with power 4, 5, or 6, it deals 4 damage to any target. Whenever you cast a creature spell with power 7, Sarkhan Unsealing deals 4 damage to each opponent and each creature and planeswalker you control. This is probably the card I want to brew around. Well, here's spoiler alert for my top 10. This is a really, really sweet card, in my opinion, because this is something you can definitely exploit with the reducing the power. Like here, go back to the bear, and then reducing the cost of the card with power 4 or greater. Like casting a creature spell with power 4 or greater isn't that tough when it's like a 4/1. And then to get 4 damage off of that, and a lot of them have like ways to either replace themselves or add a decent little. So think about Glorybringer after this, and then or just any sort of stomp, red green stomp. Like I said, especially ones that have abilities to either draw cards or replace themselves. I think that you just need to cast 1 card basically to get the advantage out of Sarkhan's Unsealing. 2 cards, and then this is just bonkers. After that, it's getting pretty crazy. If you happen to cast something that's 7 or greater, wow, that's pretty decent. So especially something like this for 4 mana, and then on turn 5, if you can cast something with power 7 or greater. Thinking of the big dinosaur, the 12/12 dinosaur, then you just board wipe your opponent. So I like this card a lot. I think this is a great brew around card, and it's definitely going to be one of my projects is trying to break this Sarkhan's Unsealing. We have the Gigantosaurus. So another card that synergies with the big dinosaur, 10/10 for 5 mana. Usually these type of cards need to have some sort of evasion, but 10/10 is quite good because if it hits for once, that's half the life total. We do have 2 fling effects now in standard, I believe. Maybe we have another one that I'm not thinking of. But 2 fling effects is going to make this card actually pretty decent. Johnny's Last Stand. 4 mana for whenever a creature or planeswalker you control dies, you may sacrifice a Johnny's Last Stand. If you do, create a 4/4 white avatar creature token with flying. So you get back your investment to have a 4/4 for 4. Not bad. Whenever a spell ability your opponent controls causes you to discard this card. If you control planes, you create a 4/4 white avatar creature token with flying. So this is actually a hoser for decks that might make you discard cards. So far, it doesn't see. There's not a lot of cards at the moment that just make you randomly discard cards in standard. But if there's a planeswalker, like think of Liliana, this could be a hate card towards Liliana because you get to choose. Yeah, it's actually pretty decent. It feels like Loxodon and Smiter at that point. But Lux and Spiner might just be strictly better because you can just cast it. Other than you can just cast this as well. So I actually like this card a lot. I think that we have to wait and see if there is any sort of discard ability. This could be definitely a hate card for that. And you can actually throw it in a main board and it still be okay because a creature Planeswalker control dies. You can sacrifice it. And you can even make this happen with a sack outlet. It doesn't mean your opponent has to do it. You can actually kill it. All right, we have the Mistcaller, a 1 mana for a 1/1 Merfolk Wizard. Wizard is very relevant because we do need more 1 mana cost wizards, in my opinion, for like the Wizard Prowess strategy, as well as, I mean, this works with Merfolk too, so it's hitting both of those. Until a turn, if a non-token creature would enter the battlefield and it wasn't, cast Exile instead. So relevant in Standard because there are things you can get rid of, like there are some big token producers that Mistcaller, just 1 mana investment, can just hose. Of course, in Modern, this is another Splinter Twin hate. This could be a big signal that maybe they actually will create or unban Splinter Twin, because there are so many cards that now exist since Splinter Twin was banned that do host Splinter Twin. And this, of course, can go in the Merfolk sideboard. This can go in a lot of sideboards for Modern. This card is pretty powerful for that ability. Demon of Catastrophes, the 4 mana 6/6 flying trample. Additional cost, you'd have to sacrifice a creature. This card is going to work best with cards that want to be sacrificed, especially 3 mana cards. So we're going to have to scour any sort of die effect in Standard at the moment, or enter the battlefield effect. Both those work quite well with the Demon of Catastrophes. And too bad this didn't exist during Innistrad, because there were a ton of those that wanted to be sacrificed, that got something out of being sacrificed. I'm not thinking of any right off the top of my head in Standard at the moment, but I'm sure there might be one. Treasure Keeper comes to mind. Treasure Keeper's not bad, because when it dies, it actually... but it doesn't synergize. They don't have like the Filigree Familiar. You draw a card when it dies. That's not bad. So Filigree Familiar with Demon of Catastrophes, gain 2 life, draw a card, get a 6/6 out. Not bad. I think this card's actually quite good. You can just kill a token off like a Fungal Infection too. That's always an option. Alpine Moon, a 1 mana red spell for enters the battlefield. You choose an on-basic land card and lands your opponent's control with the chosen name. Lose all land types and abilities and gain add 1 mana of any color. People are saying this is good for Tron. I don't think so, because it's just reducing Tron by, very, just like 1 mana. It hits Tower by 2, but it's still, they're adding 5 mana at that point because it doesn't turn off the rest of them. And I don't know, it's pretty, this is a pretty decent card for Tron to actually put in from their sideboard to name like cards like Field of Ruin to help them actually achieve their combo. It doesn't really, I don't think fetch lands, it turns their fetch lands into a add mana of any color, so you're not going to be wanting to name that. It is going to keep some of the utility lands in check though in Standard, so again, decent little sideboard card, the more the merrier. We'll have to wait and see if this does affect lots of things in Modern. Again, I think this actually goes in Tron sideboards, like Green Red Tron, to protect by naming Ghost Quarter, by naming Field of Ruin. We have a Plaka Worm reprint, 7/7 for a gain 7 life, and when it dies, draw a card. Not a bad card. Again, in like a big stompy type deck, this possibly could see play, but 7 mana is a huge investment. A Mentor of the Meek reprint, not bad. This Catcher's Monument, I'll probably chuck like 1 or 2 of these at least in the deck. This might actually push me away from building a Vampire Tribal Catcher's Monument into Mentor of the Meek Catcher's Monument, because whenever a creature with power 2 or less enters the battlefield, you pay 1 to draw a card. That's one of the problems with Catcher's Monument, is you start to run out of cards, and this can definitely go in that slot. We have the Metamorphic Alteration. Enchant creature is a copy of chosen creature when it enters a battlefield. So it's kind of a weird 2 mana clone, because you still have to have another creature card. However, this can be used defensively. You can turn a big creature like a Glorybringer into a terrible creature like a Beaumont Courier at that point. Or, you can throw it into a post. Oh, I guess you can't post attack, make it into a monkey token that will die, but you get the gist. You can throw it, you can make the biggest creature into the weakest creature, you can make the weakest creature into the biggest creature. Alrighty, we have the Infernal Reckoning, a 1 mana exile target colorless creature, you gain life equal to its power. This is definitely an anti-Eldrazi card, as the picture shows. It's also not bad for affinities, so I'm thinking this card's going to see a lot of play in Modern, because those are 2 very relevant decks. Takes care of Traxos in Standard at the moment, but not a lot of other cards that you have to worry about that are colorless at the moment in Standard. Like Walking Bliss is kind of awkward. Scrappy Scrounger, sure. It does. Oh, never mind. It does get rid of the Heart of Cran. So I could definitely see that being a decent little sideboard to gain 4 life and exile a colorless creature. So, yeah, Aethershore Harvester, Heart of Karan, great hate card. I don't know if it's relevant enough versus some of those decks. I think you'll usually will find a target, though. Dark Dweller Oracle, 2 mana for a 2/2, sacrifice a creature, exile top card of library. You may play that card this turn. I really like this card with, again, it's a goblin, so it synergizes with tokens. So Krenko in EDH, I really like this card, and it's not bad. You can, if you're missing land drops, is a great way to get land drops. It's a great way to make your cards go the long distance for maybe cards that have been out-tempoed. Where I really like this in Standard right now, one of the synergies is with the 2/1 monkey token. So after it deals combat damage, sacrifice it to then, maybe hit a land drop. Maybe a little bit wishful thinking at that point, but I think Dark Dweller Oracle is one of the more fun cards and gets the noggin going for synergies, particularly in Standard. Modern, I actually could see this see play. Again, it can sacrifice, it is a sack outlet, and that allows you just to kind of go through the top of your deck. The Prodigious Growth, a 6 mana enchant creature gets +7/+7 trample. Where I like this is any sort of ability that can cheat enchantments into play. So thinking EDH, there'll be a lot of things, possibly Modern. This is one of the better auras. I know there already is a couple cards that do similar effects. You go get an aura, put it on a creature. Not a bad card. I think the only thing we have right now is the Eldrazi, the one that gives it, was it +10/+10 and Annihilate or something? So this, of course, is another one that can, maybe go towards that, but yeah, it's going to be pretty difficult to pull off. Okay, we have this Sun Cleanser. This Sun Cleanser is a 2 mana for a 1/4. When it enters the battlefield, choose 1, remove all counters from target creature. It can't have counters put on it for as long as Sun Cleanser remains on the battlefield. And target opponent loses all counters. That player can't get counters as long as Sun Cleanser remains on the battlefield. Hey, we get some infect hate. Also, it's some long overdue energy hate, I believe. Yeah, it does work that way. And it does affect -1/-1 counters and +1/+1 counters. So, this just comes into play, kills a walking ballista. At least it makes it go away. And there are a few other cards that are only counter specific and that can then just kill. I think this is a pretty versatile little card for a 1/4. That body's not bad. And there might be some synergies that I'm not thinking about in Modern where it gets rid of counters on a creature that are negative, like you have to get them off before it does something. I'm thinking like Slumbering Dragon, for example. Of course, that's a bad example, but that's still an example nonetheless of how this card can think. Because Slumbering Dragon, I believe, is a 1-drop. So you can go turn 1 Slumbering Dragon, then turn 2 Sun Cleanser, and then have I believe, a 5/5 Dragon with Fire Breathing, if that's what the card does. But again, this can make people lose all infect counters. This is definitely a pretty cool card. Patient Rebuilding, 5 mana. At the beginning of your upkeep, target opponent puts the top 3 cards of their library into their graveyard, then you draw a card for each land card. I actually really like this as a control finisher. I think it's not bad. Yes, it is something that will take a enormous amount of time to mill your opponent, but residual mill strategies are kind of my favorite way to play mill. Rather than like the all-in mill strategies is try to mill 10, mill 17, mill 20. This will do 3, 3, 3, 3, 3. And what I like about this is it's on average drawing you a card every turn. So it's, if you're running 33% of your deck of land, which most decks do, they usually run a little bit above 33%. You're up to 35, 37. This is going to get you a card per turn on average. Not bad. And if it does get a land, you're actually milling relevant cards. We have the Izareth the Awakener, 3 mana for 3/3 Death Touch. When it attacks, you may pay X and return target creature card with converted mana cost X from your graveyard to the battlefield. With a corpse counter, if that would then leave the battlefield, you exile it. Not a bad card. Again, the 3/3 Death Touch is kind of relevant. I'll have to wait and see if this will actually work in Standard. I kind of like it as a one-of. It's going to be a great limited bomb, though. I think that to really see play in Standard, they would have needed to make it a 3/4 or 4/3. However, it's still quite good with the ability by attacking and then throwing something back into play. There might be some sort of infinite combo with this particular, by taking an extra attack phase every time, adding mana. I'm not sure. That seems to be a little bit tough to assemble that. We have the Lathlith Dragon Queen. 6/6/4/6, flying whenever a non-token dragon enters the battlefield under control. You create a 5/5 red dragon creature token with flying. So there you go, another way to just create a lot of dragons. And then for 2 mana, it gives all your dragons fire breathing. Not a terrible card. It's just a bonkers card in limited. 6 mana for a 6/6. Other than it's going to be tough to have other dragons. Usually dragons are rare. Yeah. So standard though, it's pretty tough in standard. Casual card all through and through. Vivian's Invocation, 7 mana. Look at the top 7 cards. You may put a creature card from among them on the battlefield and the rest on the bottom of your library. And whenever a creature is put onto the battlefield this way, it deals damage equal to its power to target creature. I almost would like fight for just Phyrexian Obliterator, but without fight, I mean, this is just strictly better in most cases than fight. Other than the dinosaurs want fight at the moment. 7 mana is a little bit steep to only look at 7 cards. It's not going to reduce a lot of cards at this moment. It's kind of awkward in standard. There's just really nothing that a lot of them have cast abilities at that point. So this is more of a casual card, more of a commander card, I would assume, than really. I mean, what can you cheat in at that point for 7 mana that really wants to come into play? I'm not sure. There might be something I'm overlooking. Okay, so now we're on to the Aether Shield Artificer. 4 mana for a 3/3 when it enters the battlefield. At the start of combat on your turn, target artifact creature you control gets +2/+2 and indestructible. Again, this is decent with Aether Harvester, Heart of Cran type abilities, as you can then attack in and not worry about indestructibility. I don't think it's quite playable for standard because that's a steep cost for 4. At that point, I think there might be a little bit better things to invest your mana in. Not a bad card whatsoever in limited if you can hook it up with, I don't know what is in limited at the moment for artifacts, but if you do get some artifact creatures, +2/+2 and indestructible is pretty decent. We have the Windreader Sphinx, which is a reprint. Whenever a creature with flying attacks, you can draw a card, 3/7/7. Typically a pretty decent limited bomb if you can get up to the 7 mana. All right, so now I think one of the better cards spoiled so far is the Stitcher's Supplier. This is a 1 mana for a 1/1. When it enters the battlefield or dies, put the top 3 cards of your library into your graveyard. I'm thinking Marionette Master is going to want this for my Godpharaoh's Gift deck, as it can push me more into black than blue. It could also allow me not to run any non-creature spells. So Chart of Course and similar cards like that can just be replaced with Stitcher's Supplier, and we'd have plenty of mill. I still think you do want blue because Champion is still probably the best card for the Godpharaoh's Gift type decks. However, this is a very, very solid 1-drop to then set up the mill strategy and go from there. It also works with like the Embalm and Eternalize cards at the moment. Also works with any sort of zombies that then want to come back. So in Modern, for example, this can find a Gravecrawler, or it can find something else that then can be brought back. This is definitely not a bad card to just strictly put into Dredge, other than cards like Faithless Looting and Burning Inquiry and whatnot might just be, of course, better because they get the added side of drawing cards, which then can dredge you. So we'll have to, again, wait and see where this hits, but at the moment, this is one of the better cards ever printed for what it's doing. I mean, traditionally, zombies have done these type of things. Most of them have seen play with the self-mill type strategy, and this is a pretty 6 cards for 1 card is pretty good, especially in this format when you can just block a Beaumont Courier or an Earthshaker Ken, or even it dies to Chain Whirler. You get some value out of it. Thud, this is our fling effect. As an additional cost, sacrifice a creature, deals damage. Thud deals damage equal to sacrifice creature's power to any target. So it reduces the cost of fling by 1, but it is sorcery speed. There's a 12/12 and a 10/10 dinosaur right there. Enough said. There definitely could be a fling type effect in standard with Thud in the mix. Blanchwood Armor gets a reprint. 1/1 for each force you control. This is one of those cards that could be hooked up to the Stag for hexproof and a big creature. Ajani's Pridemate, one of my favorite cards ever printed, gets a reprint, and we do have the Ajani's Welcoming run underneath it. It says whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 1 life. I do think this is strictly worthless in a Soul Sister, but there is some upside that an enchantment is harder to kill than a creature. However, Soul Sisters trigger off each other, whereas Ajani's Welcome does not trigger off of another Ajani's Welcome. But it is still a 1 mana Ajani's Welcome into Ajani's Pridemate. We do have like the Crested Sunmare that works off Ajani's Welcome as well. So we could definitely start brewing around a deck of Ajani's Welcome, really having these gain life triggers actually have a better way of triggering. Okay. Not bad, no Catcher's Monument, by the way, either, if that's the route you want to go. We have the Departed Deckhand. This is a 2 mana Spirit Pirate. When it becomes a target of a spell, sacrifice it. Can only be blocked by spirits, 2/2. And for 4 mana, target creature you control can only be blocked by spirits. This is kind of a weak card. It's not constructed playable in my opinion. But for 4 mana that can make something unblockable, pretty good in the, and they did this on purpose for limited. If, of course, if it didn't have this clause of being targeted by a spell, sacrifice it, it would be a busted, 2/2 unblockable card for 2 mana. Hook it up with an enchantment. Yeah, it'd be too good. So that's the clause there. It's still gonna be pretty decent in limited though. We have the Spell Spectre, 4 mana for a 1/3. When enters battlefield, target opponent discards a card. Whenever the opponent discards a card, that player loses 2 life. Pretty cool. I guess this is what that discard a card 4 mana spell is kind of trying to counteract. Definitely a good limited card. You get 2 life in a card and a 1/3 flyer. And then any residual discarding cards, your opponent loses 2 life. I'm sure some commander decks are going to want this, like, I can't even think of the discard. Nekazar? No, who's the discard? Mindseize deck. Gutter Snipe gets a reprint. Pretty decent in standard at the moment because we have Opt and we are getting an Anticipate reprint, so Gutter Snipe can work with those cantrip type cards quite well. We have the Druid of Horns, which is a 4 mana 2/3. Whenever you cast an Aura spell that targets Druid of Horns, you create a 3/3 green beast creature token. This is actually quite significant. I don't know, 4 mana might make it unplayable for standard, but limited, this is quite good. We've already seen like Blanchwood Armor, but where I really like this is we have the cartouches. One of them already cantrips. And then the other ones are pretty good, like can't be blocked until end of turn or create a 1/1. There are quite a bit of auras. Arcane Flight, you have the Curiosity type effects. There's 1 in green and 1 in blue that can go on Druid of the Horns. Definitely a pretty sweet little card to brew around. Don't think it's going to be competitive, but it might be a fun little deck to take to an F&M. There are also, green-red auras could be a thing then, because now you have a creature that gets pumped up. You still have SRAM, that you could, I guess, green-white auras, you draw a card and create a 3/3. Not too shabby. Horizon Scholar gets a reprint. Nothing special there. Reassembly Skeleton, not a bad card in limited. Has a lot of combo pieces in Commander. Double cast whenever you cast your next instant sorcery spell. Copy it. Pretty good. This is a 2-mana. This is an uncommon 2 mana. That's downshifted. Usually these abilities are rare. We have a Dryad of something. Look at the top card of your library. If it's a land card, you may reveal it and add that card to your hand. So it's going to get cards off the top of your library. I actually do like this. I might actually put this in Oketra's Monument as the combo. It works pretty good with the combo because you can at least get a land off the top of your library, but it's only once per turn to look at the top card of the library. So what I do like it is with Vizier the Benandry. I think it's got pretty good synergy. Alrighty. We have Herald of Faith. I believe this is a reprint. Tax, you gain 2 life. Mirror Image enters the battlefield with a copy of a creature you control. So a clone effect for 3 mana uncommon. So usually clone effects are 4 mana. But you have to target one of your own cards, which is actually quite weak compared to other clone effects. Because usually you just always get the best card on the battlefield. This one, your opponents can actually kill a card in response to, and then you're left with nothing. Blood Divination, 4 mana to draw 3 cards if you sacrifice a creature. Pretty decent card. I actually could see this being constructed playable with, again, creatures that want to die, i.e. like Treasure Keeper. Lightning Strike gets a reprint. Recollect gets a reprint. Harrowmancer's Cage enters the battlefield, exile target non-land permanent an opponent controls until it leaves the battlefield. So it's just a strictly worse Ixalan's Binding, but it's still another ability that works along that. Oh man, you can cast out Ixalan's Binding and the Arrowmancer's Cage. Wow, you can just exile everything. Psychic Corrosion, 3 mana. Whenever you draw a card, each opponent puts the top 2 cards of their library in your graveyard. That's actually a pretty decent little mill type effect. Because it actually synergizes with another card that mills 3, and then if the land got milled, draw a card, so it's mill 5 per turn if you start to stack these. Yeah, I don't know. Could see play. Dargath Ghoul, this is one of the reasons I think that zombies actually are relevant. We have a lot of 1-drops now, and a 2/2 for 1 mana is very relevant. So we have the Lord effects with it. There's 2 Lords and another one that deals damage when it comes into play. I think zombies could definitely be a tribe. Siegebreaker Giant, 5 mana for a 6/3. Target creature can't block this turn. Trample. Doesn't even have to turn it into a coward. Reclamation Sage gets a reprint. That's a definitely very, very powerful card that always sees play because it's going to take care of pesky artifacts or enchantments. We do have the Thrashing Brontodon, but this at least leaves back a 2/1 body, so you're going to have to evaluate which one's better. In that case, I am giving the nod towards the Reclamation Sage. Does see a lot of modern play too. Lenin Vanguard, a 1/1 for 1. At the beginning of your combat on your turn, if you control 3 or more creatures, it gets +1/+1 until turn you gain 1 life. This is kind of cool it's definitely not Soul Sisters playable, but it's kind of cool with the Ajani's Pridemate. Turn 1 this, turn 2 Ajani's Pridemate, turn 3 get another creature out. You're at least starting to pump it up. The Skilled Animator, 3 mana for a 1/3. When Skilled Animator enters the battlefield, target artifact you control becomes an artifact creature with power toughness 5/5 for as long as it remains on the battlefield. So you get a 1/3 and a 5/5 for 3 mana to put something. You know, there are a lot of cantripping artifacts already in like Prophetic Prism that this can work with. Rise from the Grave gets a reprint. Volcanic Dragon gets a reprint. Colossal Majesty. At beginning of your upkeep, if you control a creature with power 4 or greater, draw a card. So kind of like a Triumph Ferocity wannabe type card, works with that theme of power 4 or greater. The Militia Bugler, 3 mana, 2/3. When it enters the battlefield, look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature card with power 2 or less from among them and put it into your hand. This is actually not terrible. I could see this like collective companies actually wanting this, because the collective or counters company, you need to find 2 specific creatures with, and they both have power 2 or less. Devoted Druid in the Vizier. And this is another way to dig for them. And it's 4 cards. Yeah, and it can still get you a lot of other relevant cards. It can find another Militia Bugler. So Catcher's Monument, this is another card that I probably want in this particular deck. So I'll probably go away from the Vampire. I don't know. I like this card a lot. Exclusive Mage, 3 mana for a 2/2. Enters the battlefield. Return target creature an opponent controls to its owner's hand. So it's a mana war. Not bad. It's also a wizard. Gravedigger, reprint. Volley Veteran. 4/2, enters the battlefield, target creature an opponent control. You deal damage equal to the number of goblins to a creature an opponent controls. Not bad at all for limited. I don't know if it could see constructed play, but if a dedicated goblin deck, it definitely could. You know, maybe even the God Pharaoh's goblin deck would want something like this. Declare Dominance, 5 mana for target creature gets +3/+3, and all creatures able to block it must do so this turn. Probably needs Trample to really push it over the top. We have the Novice Knight, which is a Defender 2/3. As long as it's enchanted or equipped, it may attack as though it doesn't have Defender. So you need to run it alongside some equipments. I guess it's okay-ish. Good blocker for 1 mana for a 2/3. Sif gets a reprint. Murder gets a reprint. Havoc Devils gets a... No, this is a new print. 4/3 for 4. Trample. Vigilance Baloth. A Vigilance 5/5 for 5. Great limited card. Do not underestimate this card. Angel of Dawn, I believe it's just like the Dawnbringer bird. Isn't the exact same, flying 3/3 for 5 mana. Enters battlefield, creatures you control +1/+1 vigilance. Don't underestimate this in limited. Another limited Bomb and Sleep. Tap all creatures target player controls. Those creatures don't untap. If you've never played Sleep in limited, you are missing out of how powerful this effect is. It's just game breaking. Nightmare's Thirst. You gain 1 life. Target creature gets -X until a turn where X is the amount of life you've gained this turn. It's pretty mad, but it's okay. Viashino Pyromancer. This is a very good popper card. Enters the battlefield, deals 2 damage to target player or planeswalker for 2 mana, leaves back a 2/1 body. Really looking forward to playing this. Might make my Wizard Tribal actual playable, because you have the Thermal Alchemist, you have this, you have the Lava Runner, and then you have the 3/2 for 3 mana that does the exact same ability if you control another wizard. So looking forward to brew around this in Pauper. We have the Root Snare, which is a fog effect for 2 mana. Invoke the Divine, gets another reprint when he's barely had a reprint in Dominaria. We have a Switcheroo. We have a Ravenous Harpy. Switcheroo also is a reprint. Ravenous Harpy, 3 mana, flying, sacrifice another creature, put a +1 counter on it. Very, very good and limited. It just makes all of your bad blocks or attacks actually reward you by getting something bigger. Act of Treason gets a reprint. Druid of the Cowl gets a reprint. Cavalry Drillmaster, when it enters the battlefield, target creature gets +2/+2 and first strike. This actually is also another card that is on the verge of being Pauper playable, as you can make your 1-drop bigger for a turn and actually attack in, and leaves back a 2/1 body. It's also a knight, not bad. The Aviation Pioneer is a 1/2 that creates a 1/1 colorless Thopter artifact creature token, kind of like a dumbed down PNLR, but in blue. Vampire Sovereign, a 5 mana 3/4, enters the battlefield, target opponent loses 3 life, and you gain 3 life. So it's like a worse Siege Rhino. But you know, we all underestimated Siege Rhino and it saw a ton of play. So is this card just, you know, a 4/5 trample versus a 3/4 1 mana more flying? I don't know. I don't think we should underestimate this. Catalyst Elemental, a 3 mana for a 2/2. You can sacrifice to add 2 mana. This can then pump up towards a creature. Like a worse Generator Servant, though. I wish it would have you know, given something, again, like a haste to a creature. It is another card in Pauper with this type of effect. We're getting a ton of these. Who knows if we can somehow chain off like a crazy sacrifice deck. Again, you can cast this and immediately sacrifice it, though, so that's the upside to this. You're only down 1 mana, so if you have any ability that like draws cards or gets some sort of perk off of a creature entering the battlefield or dying, this could definitely see play. The Bristling Boar can only be blocked by more than one, or can't be blocked by more than creature, 4/3 for 4. Daybreak Chaplain, another lifelinker 1/3, not a bad limited card. The Anticipate gets a reprint. Abnormal Endurance. Until a target creature has +2/+0, and when this creature dies, return it. So what is Unnatural Stamina with 1 more mana? Yeah. Electrify reprint, Centaur, Corsair reprint, Dwarven Priest. Enters the battlefield, you gain 1 life for each creature control, 2/4 for 4 mana. Not a bad little limited card. It's a way to actually maybe trigger off that Angel. Aven Windmage, 2/2 flying. Whenever cast into a sorcery spell, it gets +1/+1, so kind of like a pseudo prowess. It also is a wizard. A 6/5 vanilla creature for 6 mana. Fiery Finish deals 7 damage to a creature for 6 mana. Uncommon, huh? Ugh. Colossal Dreadmaw, they're just trolling us at this point with another reprint. Gallant Cavalry enters the battlefield. Creator 2/2 White Knight for 4 mana. 2/2 Vigilance. Yeah, 2. Oh, this is like Call the Cavalry. Funny. But you get back, like, this is something that can be blinked. So I don't know which one's better. A spell in your graveyard or something that can be blinked. Not a bad little card. 4 mana for 2/2/2s. Again, Oketra's Monument might want it because of the Aven. I use the mechanic that can return something. Yeah, probably not that great at that point, because at that point we're using some high impact cards. Cancel reprint, Child of Night, Fire Elemental. Elvish Rejuvenator enters the battlefield. Look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may put a land card from among them onto the battlefield tapped, put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Usually these type of abilities indefinitely gave you a land. But I mean, it can get you any land. So that's the upside of this card. The downside of this card is if you just miss, you're out of luck. Inspired Charge gets a reprint. Elvish Rejuvenator, let's just go back though. I might play this in Animar. Should find you a land at that point. And because you use a lot of non-basics, and sometimes you run out of basics. Disperse, reprint, Epicure of Blood. Whenever you gain life, each opponent loses 1 life for a 4/4. I mean, so there's some infinite combos, of course, with this. Doesn't have flying, though. Feels like this card should have flying. 5 mana for a 4/4. Goblin Instigator. This is a card that I definitely want to brew around in Pauper with the Song of Blood. So I'm thinking about going an all-in Goblin route. The problem with running cards like Dragon Fodder and Krenko's Command is their spells, so they're like non-bows with Song of Blood. So Song of Blood, though, is a card that you mill the top 4 cards of your library, and creatures you control when they attack get +1/+0, +1/+0 for each creature card milled in this way. So Goblin Instigator can go towards that count, and it's just two cards for 1. So it's just a strictly worse, in my opinion, Goblin War Marshal or Mog War Marshal. Because War Marshal has a lot of synergies with like the sacrificing the goblin. But still, this is a very reasonable card to be playing in Pauper. Gasspark Twins, 7 mana for a 7/7. Can block an additional creature each combat and has trample. A Nightly Valor gets a reprint. Divination gets a reprint. Infernal Scarring a reprint. Goblin Motivator is basically just a Bloodlust Insider reprint, but it's kind of more relevant, in my opinion, creature type of Goblin Warrior versus Human Warrior, I guess. Giant Spider reprint. Knight of the Tusk reprint. I think that's a reprint. Yeah, it is. Vigilance 3/7. Dwindle. Creature gets -6, -0, and when it blocks, destroy it. All right, so it's a 1-time block. This is pretty decent removal. Lich's Caress is a very good limited card. Destroy a creature and gain 3 life. We have a Hostile Minotaur, 3/3 haste. Nothing special here. Highland Game gets a reprint. Knight's Pledge gets a reprint. I believe this is a reprint. Frilled Sea Serpent gets a reprint. Yeah, this was a card, I believe. Can't be blocked for 7 mana, 4/6 for 6. Skeleton Archer, when it enters the battlefield, deals 1 damage to any target. That's kind of a cool ability to add to black. Typically, this is a red ability, but I don't think it's Pauper playable for just a 3/3 for 4 mana. Lava Axe reprint, Oaken Form reprint. So we get a couple of enchantments that are fairly decent in this set to hook up with all the Aura based strategies. Locks in Linebreaker is a filler card. The Gearsmith Prodigy, 1/2, as long as you control an artifact. It's a 2/2. Actually, not bad. Not bad at all. Possibly could see play Pauper, 1 mana as a 2/2 in artifact type strategies. I don't think we really have one at blue at the moment. Skymarch Bloodletter, reprint, Ogre, random, here's another 4/2, like I was talking about with the bear. I think that makes like 4 of them in standard. Plummet reprint, Luminous Bonds reprint, Ghost Form. 2 target creatures can't block this turn, or can't be blocked this turn. Actually a pretty good limited card. Sovereign's Bite. This is one of the more interesting Pauper cards, as target player loses 3 life and you gain 3 life. So now we have like Bump in the Night, we have Sovereign's Bite, we have a few other cards that also gain life, with the Madness one. I could actually see this seeing play because these type of effects, that's a 6-point swing. Your opponent down 3, you gaining 3. In aggro types, you're facing aggro decks, even decks like Delver that do have to do damage, that's very relevant. Shock is sticking around for longer. Rabid Bite, this was in the 18s already, I believe. Mighty Leap reprint, Almond Speaker reprint. Almond Speaker has seen play sometimes in standard just because the Scry 2 is relevant. 1/3 body. But I don't know. Strengthened Spores is a filler, -3/-3 instant speed. Removal spell, decent. Man, Black's got a lot of removal for this particular set. In the common slot too. Smelt is a reprint. Rock's Oracle, 4/2, enters the battlefield, draw a card for 5 mana. That's pretty hefty. Swiftcall gets reprint for the billionth time. Salvager of Secrets, 2/2, enters the battlefield, return instant or sorcery card from your graveyard to your hand. So this is just like a more expensive Archaeomancer. 2-headed Giant, Menace, or 2-headed Zombie, excuse me. Menace 4/2 for 4. Sparkton Dragon, a 3/3. When there's a battlefield, you pay 3 to do 3 damage to any target. At that point, it's not terrible though. A 3/3 for 5, kind of filler in limited, but the ability to do 3 damage later on, I guess that's an upside to it. Thornhide Wolves gets a reprint. Pegasus Courser gets a reprint. Scholar of Stars enters battlefield, controlled artifact. You draw a card. 3/2 for 4. Walking Corpse reprint. Surstrike's Titanic Growth. Revitalize. Not a bad 3 mana draw card. Gain 3 life. There is a couple abilities already that, of course, utilize off of cantripping and gaining life. So could see play. Snapping Drake. Tormenting Voice gets a bazillionth reprint for Tormenting Voice. Jeez, that's how many sets or blocks in a row have had Tormenting Voice. Wall of Vines, Trumpet Blast, Trillian Scholar, Rustwing Falcon, 1/2 for a 1. Starcrown Stag, Elk, not a horse, okay. Whenever attacks, you tap a creature defending player controls. Very good limited card. Totally Lost reprint. Uncomfortable Chill, creatures your opponent control get -2, -0, and draw a card. Take Vengeance, destroys a tap creature at sorcery speed. I typically don't like these because they end up being like off curve, but I mean it's removal. Trusty Pack Beast, a 2/3, enters the battlefield, return an artifact from your graveyard to your hand. I actually like this card a ton. Pauper, very playable. I like this in the Boros Monarch because it's going to get cards back that you've sacrificed or have whatever killed, like the Kadatha Reborn. Makes this card even better, leaves back a 2/3 body, which is relevant because there's a lot of 2-powered cards. Yeah, pretty good card. Wall of Mist is 0/5, works with the next card, the Arcadius Strategist. So here's where it gets good again. And I apologize for how long this video is. This is a long video, but we're doing the entire spoiler. Arcadius Strategist is a 4 mana, Bant colors, 3/5, Flying Vigilance. Whenever you attack, or whenever a creature or defender enters the battlefield, you draw a card. So right there, I can see a lot of defender cards or artifacts with very low converted mana costs. In fact, there are some 0 converted mana cost defenders in the history of Magic. So you can have like a cantrip your entire deck out that way. And then each creature or defender assigns combat damage equal to its toughness. Of course, defenders usually have high toughness rather than their power and can attack as though they don't have a defender. This is a very interesting card. Very, very interesting card. Yeah. It doesn't have defender itself, though. I wish it would have just given itself defender because then it could attack and then deal 5 damage rather than 3 damage for Arcadius the Strategist. But Flying Vigilance isn't terrible. And this is a very interesting card. It definitely is one of the cards I want to brew around, as there are a lot of cheap defenders in this format. And going to the history of Magic, there are a ton of them. Chromium the Mutable, 7 mana for a 7/7. Flash, the spell can't be countered. Flying, discard a card, it becomes a 1/1 and gains hexproof. The problem with Chromium is it's already competing with the Elder Dinosaur. Nezahal, that is very similar to these type of abilities. This does have flying, I guess, is the difference, but I mean the discard's very similar. You don't get to draw cards off of this. I still think Nezahal is just slightly better. We have the Nicol Bolas the Ravager, which does have a backside to it. It's a 4 mana for a 4/4. Enters the battlefield, each opponent discards a card, and you can exile it to turn it into the Nicol Bolas the Arison. +2 is draw 2 cards. Its -3 is deals 10 damage to target creature or planeswalker. Very good. Very solid. The -4 is put target creature or planeswalker card from a graveyard onto the battlefield of your control. Another great reanimation spell. And -12 is you exile all but the bottom card of target player's library. So it can actually like set up your own what's the Maniac combo. I really like this card a lot. It's a 4/4 flying. It gets an ability when it comes into play, and if it sticks around when you have 7 mana, it's just a really, really potent card. So Nicol Bolas is one of the more powerful cards in my opinion. Grixis, pretty easy to build a deck around at the moment. It's good versus aggro, good versus control, good versus midrange, and can actually go. I think that you can actually go in like a value Grixis deck or in more of a heavy control Grixis deck. So this type of card I think is pretty reasonable. Again, you have to kind of add the converted mana cost of 4 onto the converted mana cost of 7 to turn it into the Planeswalker, but all the abilities are quite relevant. I really, really like this card. We have the Vivictus Asmati flying. When Vivictus attacks, for each player, choose target permanent that player controls. So those players sacrifice those permanents. Each player who sacrifices a permanent this way reveals the top card of his library, then puts it onto the battlefield. Kind of a chaotic card. 6 mana for a 6/6 is right on curve. I mean, at that point, they're usually just getting a land, but you definitely could get killed by this particular card because I mean, I use a tally as, I mean, it's killing a card though. Yeah, you're gonna kill lands too. You can hose people out of particular cards. Very, very playable card. This is a card that actually does want haste. So all those cards that like the Bloodlust Insider or the New Goblin, I can definitely synergize with this particular card. Or anything that gives your dragons or creatures haste would be pretty good with Vivictus. So think about Godpharaoh's Gift. This is a great little target for Godpharaoh's Gift to bring back. Heroic Reinforcements. People are talking about how this card is very similar to Hellrider. It's 4 mana, create 2/1/1 soldier creature tokens until end of turn creature you control get +1/+1 haste. So you're basically creating 2 2/2s, and then all of your other creatures get +1/+1. So theoretically, you could finish off your opponent on turn 4 with even like a Servo Exhibition type deck or any other token-based strategy that wants to flood out a bunch of tokens. History Benalia, this isn't terrible because you go History Benalia, you have a 2/2, then another 2/2 comes into play. Then you cast this, you have a 3/3, a 3/3, and 2 2/2s. You're swinging in that point for, what is that, 10 damage. The next turn, your knights get pumped up. If you drop like a 1-drop and a 2-drop at that point, or a 1-drop and 2 1-drops, yeah, Heroic Reinforcements can definitely be a really, really potent card at that point. Anemone Drake gets a reprint, which I'm happy for because I don't think it saw a environment where it actually could see its true power in Standard. So that's good news. The Regal Bloodlord, a 5 mana for a 2/4. At the beginning of each end step, if you gain life, create a 1/1 black bat. Yeah, sure, not bad. Great little limited card. All of these cards are great and limited. Skyrider Patrol feels like a Hadama's Climb, sort of. 4 mana for a 2/3 flying. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you can pay a green and a blue to put a +1 counter on another creature you control, and that creature gains flying. So it does say another creature, so keep that in mind. It can't pump itself up, but it's, you know, it's a great limited card that can break the kind of board stalls and perpetually just get bigger and bigger, like other creatures bigger and bigger. Poison Tip Archer is also interesting. It's a 2/4 reach Death Touch, and whenever another creature dies, each opponent loses 1 life, so it kind of has that Blood Artist effect on it. Plus, it's got a nice little body to it for a 2/3 reach Death Touch. But all of these so far are very, very iffy if they're constructed playable, but I wouldn't be surprised if decks could utilize them. You have the Draconic Disciple, which is a 3 mana for a mana dork. Add 1 mana of any mana of any color to your mana pool, and then 7 and tap, sacrifice it to create a 5/5. Not terrible. Again, it's great and limited. It creates a 2/2 to ramp up towards stuff. Later on, it can be sacrificed away to create a 5/5. Psychic Symbiont is a 6 mana for a 3/3. Whenever Psychic Symbiont enters the battlefield, Target opponent discards a card and you draw a card. Not terrible. Kind of feels like a Dinrova Horror, and usually Dinrova Horror is very underestimated. You've got a really good blink effect to it by drawing cards and having your opponent discard a cards. Again, though, it's not Pauper because of the uncommon. At that point, though, it's hard to go beyond standard. There aren't a lot of blink effects, I don't believe. There's like Siren's Ruse at the moment in standard. The 6 mana is really, really steep for an effect like this, so I think this one is more relegated definitely towards limited. Aerial Engineer, 4 mana for a 2/4. If you control an artifact, it gets +2/+0 in flying. This is definitely the definition of a limited card, 4/4 flying for 4 mana if you control an artifact. Brawl, Bash, Ogre, 3/3. Whenever it attacks, you may sacrifice a creature to give it +2/+2. Another decent little limited card. So I think this bottom row is definitely limited. The top row I could see constructed. Satyr Enchanter, whenever you cast an enchantment spell, draw a card. Okay, this one you can definitely put in constructed. Now you have SRAM and Satyr Enchanter. This can go crazy. Really, really liking that. But the restriction is you have to add the green. Now we're on to the artifacts. Crucible World gets a reprint. Again, this is another huge symbol that the core sets are going to start to have money cards in them. This is usually been in Master Set. This is another very expensive card. What we're talking about was $60-$70 for Crucible Worlds, which is going to be accessible through M19. Don't let the Mythic mislead you. There's going to be tons of these opened. So the price of this will drastically come down, I would say, to the $15-$20 mark. Chaos Wand. This is a fun card. Target opponent exiles the top card of the library. Until target opponent exiles cards from the top of their library until they exile an instant or sorcery card. You may cast that card without paying its mana cost, then put the exile cards back on the bottom of the library in any random order. So your opponent does have to have instant or sorcery spells. This is a huge limited bomb, in my opinion. This has some fun little interactions, of course, in Commander. Paradox Engine in Standard seems pretty fun. So Brawl, I think this is going to go in a lot of decks. So fun card. Dragon's Horde. Dragon's Horde is really, really cool, actually. So it's a 3 mana rock, add 1 mana of any color, but you also get to draw a card or remove a gold counter to draw a card. If you have any sort of proliferate effect, you can start drawing cards, tap, draw a card each turn. So don't keep that in mind. Anything that can add counters, Dragon's Horde can actually be used as a draw outlet. But the 1 mana is not bad either. And at least it cantrips itself. And you can cantrip yourself immediately. So anything that reduces the cost of artifacts, this can be used to immediately just draw a card. So I like this card a lot. Amulet of Safekeeping is the Storm Hoser. Whenever you become the target of a spell or ability an opponent controls, counter that spell or ability unless its controller pays 1. So yes, it does affect Grape Shot because of the way it stacks, and then it's part of a resolution cost, not a cast cost. And then it also creature tokens get -1, -0. So that's empty the Warrens there. Again, this is a pretty cool card for modern sideboards. Desecrated Tomb, 3 mana for whenever one or more creature cards leave your graveyard, create a 1/1 black bat. So I like this card with like Relic of Progenitus or other ways it can just perpetually exile cards from your graveyard in increments, not big bursts, because you can start getting a lot of 1/1 bat creatures. You have like 5 cards in your graveyard, 5 creature cards. If you have something that's like exile card from your graveyard to do something, well, there's a 1/1, there's a 1/1, there's a 1/1, there's a 1/1, there's a 1/1. So in the history of Magic, I'm sure there's plenty of cards that synergize with the Desecrated Tomb. The Magistrate Scepter is a reprint. This is a 3 mana, 4 mana, you put a charge counter on it, and then you remove 3 charge counters, take an extra turn. This has already been abused in lots of EDH decks by being able to put charge counters on things. Sigil Sword of Valerin, 3 mana, it gets +2/+0, equipped creature gets +2/+0, vigilance, and is a knight. And whenever equipped creature attacks, create a 2/2 white knight creature token with vigilance. That's attacking. 3 mana is the equip cost. So this is a pretty potent equipment. It's going to be a powerhouse in limited. It's going to be, I would say, standard playable because it leaves back a creature that then can be equipped to it and can just create an army. So I do like this card in like a SRAM deck. It's one of the better equipments we've had in a long time. Equip cost is a little bit steep in comparison to other sword type effects in the past, but I think the power level's there. Limited though, if you see this in draft, this is pack 1, pick 1 indefinitely. Arcane Encyclopedia, 3 mana tap, draw a card. Not a bad card in limited. Suspicious Bookcase works with Arcadis. Defender 0/4, target creature can't be blocked this turn for 3 and tap. Very, very good limited card. Diamond Mare, finishing off the Mare cycle, enters the battlefield, choose a color. Whenever you cast a spell of the chosen color, you gain 1 life. This will be another card that can synergize with the Ajani's Pridemate, so we do have enough now in Standard to actually make it worthwhile. The Meteor Golem, 7 mana, for a 3/3, enters the battlefield, destroy target non-land permanent and opponent controls. Not bad. This is actually not a bad card because then you can start flickering it. In Commander, this is pretty busted with flicker effects. Animar, this is a pretty good card as it can take care of a pesky card that may be hindering what you're trying to do. I really, really like this card. 7 mana, don't let this... I mean, this is... what is the Solvent out of Kaladesh. This is the Scour from Existence out of... and traditionally, these cards are played in casual formats. A little bit of a stretch to playing it in limited. Or the Marvel would have, of course, used this. Any other way to cheat into play could use this. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see this see play in Constructed because, man, non-land permanent just destroys. Founder Renewal, beginning of upkeep, you gain a life. Another Ajani's Pridemate Synergizer, and then you can sacrifice it to draw a card. So it can cantrip itself or just gain some life per turn. I think this is a pretty decent limited card you should be picking up pretty highly. Rogue's Gloves. It deals combat damage to a player. You draw a card, equip 2, cost 2. Usually this is like your 23rd through, or 20 through 23rd pickup. It has some synergy with cards that can't be blocked, but it's pretty steep for what it does. Gearsmith Guardian, 5 mana for a gets +2/+0 as long as you control a blue creature. So you can see that it's kind of synergizing with the artifact type stuff. That's going to be one of the themes of this deck. But 5/5 for a 5 is quite weak, actually. You can actually look in Dominaria. There was a 6 mana for a 5/5 Trampler without any downside. Field Creeper gets a reprint. Manolith gets a reprint. Marauder's Axe gets a reprint. Not a bad card, though. +2/+0 and equip 2 for 2. Pretty decent little card. Sky Scanner, 1/1. When enters the battlefield, draw a card. Not a bad card whatsoever. 3 mana can reduce by things that reduce artifacts. You could definitely... This could definitely see play. For an Elvish Mystic type or Elvish Visionary type card in Artifact as on a 1/1 flyer. All right, so last but not least, we're on to the lands. We have the Detection Tower, which is tap, add a colorless mana pool, and until end of turn, your opponents and creatures they control with hexproof can be the target of spells and abilities you control, as though they didn't have hexproof. So Commander, of course, people are going to want this card for Commander as it gets rid of pesky hexproof. Very similar, of course, to the Arcane Lighthouse, except it does not get around Shroud. We have the Reliquary Tower getting a reprint. It's also the League promo, so go play in your league. This is an expensive card. Rupture Spire gets a reprint, which is a good fixer. The Cinder Barons kind of run, so this ally and enemy colors get reprints. I'm not sure if this is just, it does look like it's just in the box sets, though. So there you have it. We are almost into 2 hours for this long-ass spoiler video. We've got it out of the way. I hope you like this commentary. I will be doing a top 10 list cards of what I want to brew around, but I'm going to wait till the entire spoiler comes out. I hope you enjoyed this video, and again, feel free in the comment section to correct any misconceptions or something I got wrong, and we'll get to the brewing with this. I also want to announce that we will be doing a Rogue Master Brewer set for M19. So if you have a deck that you want to build around a specific card from M19, be sure to submit it into our Rogue Master Brewer competition when that does come out. We're going to have some good prizes. Last prize was $35 store credit. This one is going to be at least doubled because I believe some of our sponsors are going to add some price support to the mix. And yeah, so it's going to be a fun little competition. Again, on Rogue Deckbuilder, that's what I want to do, is cultivate a community where we can showcase other Rogue brews, just not my own. And yeah, viva la brews, I guess would be the expression. This has been Kevin with RogueDeckbuilder.com. Thanks for watching.